I left working for NBC News. It was an O&O, owned and operated station, one of only about a dozen in the country at the time, was WCMH Columbus, Ohio, right? And one of the reasons I left was because at that time, 20 years ago, it had become quite clear that the newsrooms were far too biased. I mean, it was pretty clear it was far too biased at that point for the newsroom and for me. I wanted honest conversation. I wanted honest stories, and it was clear that people had their thumb on the scale way back then 20 years ago. So I left WCMH Columbus. NBC, my checks came from 30 Rock, Rockefeller Center. I did a lot of stories like John Glenn being launched into space, STS-95, when he was 77 years old. Of course, he was from Ohio, so they sent me, and I went to Houston, and I went to Florida, the Space Center. Did a lot of great and wonderful things. Met George W. Bush. The first time I interviewed a president was George W. Bush. So these things have happened along the way. Good things, actually. So here's, and I tell you all this to get to this. What bothers me about all of this with Twitter is that these newsrooms were playing along with all this censorship. People like NBC News, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, and a host of other dishonest outlets. I mean, it's just dishonest. How else could you look at it? You see, Matt Taibbi said the corporate media played a key and dangerous role in all of this. Listen.
But instead of investigating these groups, journalists partnered with them. If Twitter declined to remove an account right away, government agencies and NGOs would call reporters for the New York Times, Washington Post, and other outlets, who in turn would call Twitter demanding to know why action had not yet been taken. Effectively, news media became an arm of a state-sponsored thought policing system.
Yeah. State thought police. How frightening is that? If the government works in conjunction with the media, who works in conjunction with big business, who works in conjunction, you see, it's not just the uniparty. It's all of the tentacles of the power. Big corporations who benefit from favorable decisions in the legislature. The media who plays along so they can have access to the big players and obviously get invited to the big parties because that's what they care about more. They don't care about the truth or saving the republic. You know, these people are not Thomas Paine, all right? Or even Steve Gruber, for that matter. Meanwhile, Democrats are fighting to censor whoever they can. That was clear on Capitol Hill again on Thursday. It's frightening to me.